Okay, so this video is for your notes for your remote learning. This is where you should be. We left off with our in-person learning with only Congress can declare a war. This is in the section called Legislative Powers. We're listing all the additional powers the legislative branch has in addition to the power to make the laws in this country and the power to impeach elected officials, including the president. We've gone over all the additional powers, all the way down to only Congress can declare a war, and we will continue with that now. Only Congress has the power to provide and maintain a navy. That's pretty self-explanatory. I don't think you need any additional notes with that. Therefore, they have the right to make rules for the government and the regulation of the land and naval forces. They also provide for calling forth the militia to suppress insurrections and repel invasions. Let's do a little note on this one. Well, insurrections happened earlier this year, but militia, okay? Militia is the armed public. So militia is what Johnny Tremaine was a member of, okay? Was the militia that was training and was supplied weapons in order to help ward off invasions. Insurrections or riots and invasions. Because remember, this branch represents us, the public, because it is the public who votes and puts these representatives and senators in power from their states. So because they can call forth the militia, Congress has the power to provide for organizing, arming, and disciplining the militia. Organizing, arming, and disciplining the militia. They have the power to exercise exclusive legislation in all cases. What that means is that the legislative branch is the only, or are the only, lawmakers in the United States. And it also means that states cannot interfere. Meaning, the only people that can make federal law, which is law which applies to the United States as a whole, is the legislative branch. Any laws that states make are less powerful than federal law. Okay, so if there was a federal law, let's just take a real easy one. There's a federal drinking age, 21. If a state said, we don't like that, we're going back to 18, as it once was, a state can't do that. A federal law overpowers any sort of state law, okay? And the only lawmakers who can make laws for this country is the legislative branch. States can make their own laws, but they are lesser than, all right? They are valued lesser than federal law. They're still important. You still got to follow them if you live in the state. But federal law would overrule any sort of state law. Now, here's a big one. To make all laws which are necessary and proper. Okay, this gives Congress a certain level of flexibility. They can make any laws that they deem as a group are necessary for our country and proper. We call this the elastic clause. So I'm going to bring up a debatable topic that is always debated upon, especially with gun violence, would be stronger gun regulations. And pro-gun opponents would say that taking away any level of gun rights violates the Second Amendment, which is the right to bear arms. If you read the Second Amendment, which we have in here, in the back, let's just get the actual language of the Second Amendment for a quick second. Here. Second Amendment, right to bear arms. A well-regulated militia, so a well-armed Johnny Tremaine group, which is necessary for the security of our country, and the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. That's the wording of the Second Amendment. So, the purpose of the Second Amendment was to make sure that our militia can be supplied and armed in case of an invasion. And so, stronger gun regulation, it can be argued, it can be interpreted that it doesn't mean necessarily not allowing an armed militia. It just means that there should be stronger regulations on certain types of firearms, certain types of ammunition, certain laws around purchasing or licensure. And if Congress decides to make those laws, they do it because based on maybe an uptick in gun violence or mass shootings, they feel like a stronger gun regulation law would be necessary and proper to the times. Remember, the Second Amendment was written in year 1791. It is now 2021. If Congress deems it necessary and proper at this point in time to make a law for the benefit of our public good, they have the right to do so. Okay? So, they can always make any laws which they deem are necessary and proper to the times. So there's a level of flexibility, and elastic is something that's very flexible, and that's why it's called the elastic clause. Now let's talk about wartime a little bit. I'm going to say the privilege of the writ of habeas corpus. Okay? The writ of habeas corpus means when you get arrested for a crime, there is something called due process of law, meaning you have the right to appear in court, you have the right to trial by jury, you have the right to an attorney, you have a process of rights. They don't just throw you in jail and lock away the key. And they say that the privilege of habeas corpus shall not be suspended. They can't take that away from people. Unless in cases of rebellion against the country or invasion, the safety may require it. So in other words, when war has been declared, okay, or when acts of war are happening against the United States, either from people inside the United States or from foreign peoples invading the United States, or creating terrorist acts against the United States. So during war, the government can take away due process from prisoners. So, the government can indeed take prisoners, throw them in a jail cell, lock the door, and decide what to do with them as far as their punishment or how long they need to be. So there are certain rights that are typically afforded to people with the due process of law, which actually can be suspended during wartime for emergency reasons by the government. So don't be naughty. Okay. We're going to the next page. Almost done with Article 1. Okay, so the end of Section 9. It says, no title of nobility shall be granted by the United States. Okay. What that means is no kings ever. Now, a title of nobility, a noble, okay, does not necessarily mean a king, but titles of nobility were common in England, Great Britain, and they were granted by the king, by the royal power. We are not going to do those in the United States. We do not have knights, we do not have nobles, we do not have kings and princes and all of that. Okay, we have no royal connection. So we wanted to make sure that that never happened and that the President of the United States is not treated as a king. Okay, no kings in this country ever. That's not the type of government that we are going to run. Section 10, last section. No state shall enter into any treaty, alliance, or confederation. Okay, with other countries. Okay, so a state cannot offer a treaty to any country. So let's say the United States is at war with, I don't know, Brazil. Okay, Vermont can't say, we're cool with Brazil. We're going to offer a peace treaty with them, but the rest of the country can fight. Or maybe we'll offer a peace treaty on behalf of the United States. No. Okay, a state cannot offer a treaty. A state cannot make an alliance with another country. Only Congress can make alliances and treaties with other countries. Or confederations, meaning states cannot join a confederate government, meaning breaking away from the United States government and forming their own government, as did happen in the Civil War. So I'm just going to write states can't do these. And I'm going to circle confederation. Southern states did this in 1861, and this led to the Civil War, which was over whether or not the southern states had the right to secede, break away from our union. President Lincoln would not let that happen because we are sworn to protect the United States Constitution. Okay, you cannot just allow states to secede. And obviously they were seceding because they were violating what would become federal law and what would become an amendment to the Constitution, which was over the issue of the legality of slavery. They knew that the United States government, as it was constructed at the time, was set on abolishing slavery, which it would do, and the southern states saw that coming, so they chose to leave the country, and that is what that war was over. And obviously the northern states prevailed, the United States prevailed, and the abolition of slavery prevailed. Okay, no state shall, without the consent of the Congress, lay any imposts or duties on imports or exports. So imports are goods that are shipped into our country in trade. Exports are goods that we ship out of our country to other countries. And so no state, all right, can, states, well, that's not a plural, so no apostrophe there, can't tax imports or exports to and from the U.S. States don't have those rights. Only Congress has those rights. Okay, so at this point, we are now done with Article 1, the legislative branch. That's it. As you can see, we are approaching Article 2, which you obviously know is no longer the legislative branch. It's going to be the executive branch. Okay? So, maybe write executive branch. At the start of Article 2. Okay, and right now you're going to want to continue on with your remote learning. And you're going to want to do your quiz for Article 1, which is here in your remote learning folder. All right, there's going to be 20 questions. It has to do with all of Article 1, going all the way back and including even the preamble, start of Article 1, the legislative branch, all the way through where we just ended with the start of the executive branch, which is Article 2. So here's what you're going to want to put for your note check. You're also going to want to submit your notes to your note check. So what we're going to do is I would like you in this last box of Article 1 right here before you get to Article 2, let's do a triangle. Okay? Everybody draw a triangle. Then I'd like you to do your initials. And then what I'd like you to do is I'd like you to put the letter A if you're an A student, or the letter B if you're a B student. Okay, so a triangle, your initials, letter A or letter B, depending on whether or not you're an A student or a B student. You're going to want to submit those notes to Constitution Note Check number 2, found in this remote learning folder.